What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the latest episode of The Layup-Line. My name is Dolos, and today I've got another episode of the Timeline series going, and I've got a guest because the draft recently passed, and so I have, Dylan, probably better known as Thunder Chats to some of you here joining me. He's a Thunder podcaster. He's a Thunder super fan as well. He is also a great Twitter follow, so absolutely go check him out and support him. But if you've been following this series for a while, you already know it's been important to me to try and get the perspective of Thunder fans, people within the community on the kind of draft decisions and personnel decisions that the franchise has been making. And so with that being the case, 4 huge additions to the team this past draft. And I've got Dylan on the show to talk to me about the, not only those players, how they project on the Thunder roster, but just how are they being received by the Thunder fan base? How excited were they about those specific draft picks? So, I'm just going to kick it to Dylan to get things started then.
Yeah, man. No, I'm super excited to be here. If you follow me on the timeline, you listen to our podcast at all, I'm very excited about this draft. This whole draft class, the whole draft cycle has been really fun to just really dive into and learn more about the players. And, the haul that we got, I couldn't be more happy about it. So yeah, I'm ready to get into it, man.
Yeah, and just as a quick recap, I'm sure everyone obviously knows, but the Thunder selected Chet Holmgren, 2nd overall. They then later traded back into the lottery and grabbed Ousmane Dieng at the 11th pick. They maintained that number 12th pick because they didn't have to give that up in the trade with the Knicks. And so they also selected Jaylin Williams, kind of already being known as that's J-Dub, because they're later selected another Jaylin Williams, J. Will. So pretty exciting draft night to end the day with 4 different players. Just I'm gonna let you take the floor again and just to specifically give me your draft day thoughts on the Thunder selecting those specific players.
Yeah, man. Well, the writing was pretty much on the wall ever since the lottery hit when we got the number 2 pick that Chet was probably going to be the guy. The only real difference was that, everybody thought that Orlando was going to take Jabari. We didn't think we was going to be making the decision between Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren. We thought it was going to be Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren. So it was a little bit different, but even, as the days started to, unravel on that Thursday, and when, it started to look like Paolo was going to be the pick for the Magic, all the reporters, all the insiders all maintained that Chet was probably going to be the pick. So, we were setting ourselves up for failure pretty badly if Chet wasn't the pick. But now we're really excited for Chet specifically because, this draft class is a little bit weaker than last year. Last year was a really strong draft class, specifically at the top, but there's still a lot of value in this draft. That's something that I've been saying a lot. And, to bring in a guy like Chet Holmgren, who is going to from day one, just be a defensive anchor, a defensive game changer. He's going to be a guy that blocks shots at the rim, contest shots. He's an extremely fluid and moves really well for his size, for a big man. So he's a guy that can move his feet, flip his hips, can be a really solid switchable defender. I'm not gonna say he's gonna shut down Kyrie Irving on a switch or anything like that, but he can really get after on defense and make it difficult for the ball handler on switches and give you a little bit of defensive versatility. Offensively, I've had a lot of draft guys on my podcast, and it's been kind of consensus that we've probably seen about 40% of what Chet can do offensively at Gonzaga last year. And the reason being is because he stepped into a veteran team, with Drew Timme, Andrew Nembhard, guys that, needed the ball, guys who the offense ran through. And, he didn't give any lip about that. There was no word about behind the scenes about Chet being unhappy, about Chet causing a fuss about his role. He stepped into his role and he did it well. So I think he averaged about 14 points a game. He did so very efficiently, but what you got to realize about those 14 points a game is he did those basically off of scraps because he wasn't the first or second option on offense. A lot of times he wasn't even the third or fourth. He was literally getting those buckets off of scraps. But like I said, he did so efficiently. I think he shot near 50, 40, 80, something like that off the top of my head. Was really efficient around the rim. I think he shot 80% around the rim. So, he's got a lot to show offensively. The big thing that I'm really excited for is his shooting. You can see the shade behind me. I'm a huge Shai Gilgeous-Alexander guy. And I've been a big proponent of surrounding Shai with shooters. I said, I want him on the wings. I want him at the bigs. I want the coach to be able to shoot, the rest to be able to shoot, just surround the dude with shooters. And so Chet, he's a guy that came out of the college season shooting 40% from three. I'm not expecting him to be a 40% 3-point shooter, but if he could shoot 35, 36% from three at the big man position, that'll give Shai another like true floor spacer. So I'm excited for that. And also like the dude is just like the intangibles, like he's really smart. He's a highly intelligent player, has a high basketball IQ, high feel for the game. And everything that you hear about the guy is his work ethic is unmatched. Like he's a dog, like he wants to get better. He wants to be the best. I think he said in an interview a couple months ago when asked who he thought the best player in the league was, he said me in a couple of months. So that's the type of player we got the number 2 pick. So yeah, we all knew the pick was going to happen, but I love the pick, Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, I'm glad you really dived into his skill set a lot there. And I was doing some pre-draft shows and whatnot, so I did have some draft people come and talk to me as well, since I'm not necessarily a draft expert in myself. So I was glad to have those people in my ear. And I've got to be honest, I really am happy to have you and your excitement level about Chet, because there's part of me that's still a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to Chet Holmgren, because as someone that doesn't closely watch college, I don't have a lot of context for just how good he was there or even previously. And so when I just kind of watch film, like, as someone who strictly just kind of only watches the NBA, that frame gives me immediate pause, as I'm sure it does with a lot of others and a lot of other people that are still skeptical about him. I said it like pre-draft as well. I felt like, I see the ceiling of where he's a generational defensive player. The floor spacing abilities that he has. I'm a little less bullish on some of the ball handling stuff, but like I still think he's a quality offensive player with a a high impact role at the NBA level. But out of those top 3 guys, I felt like, with his frame, his build, like I thought he had the most bustability to him out of those top 3. So I just want to, throw it back to you. What do you have to say to those that are still skeptical about Chet Holmgren's impact at the next level?
Well, it's valid. I mean, if you look at the guy, I mean, you can tell he kind of looks like Count Olaf from like this Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate. Like, when he had the suit on, that's what I say he looked like. But yeah, I mean, he looks different than like the typical NBA player, and to a lot of people, they're just not going to like that. But I kind of throw it back to one of our guests came on, Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings, and it was like a 2-part quote. And he said that he was texting with the scouts, well-known scouts. He told me not to reveal the name. I'm not going to reveal the name, but he said that he was asking him early in the year about the same thing about the frame. It's like, I'm worried about the frame. Like, he can do all these things, but like, is he going to be able to hold up? Really worried about the frame. That scout came back and said, when you worry about the frame, that's when you lose your job. And he's like, okay, well, chalk that down. That's a good quote. And he said, let me tell you this. I went overseas with them when they was doing the FIBA World Cup U19 thing. That team had Johnny Davis, it had Jaden Ivey, had Kenny Lofton Jr. Like it had a lot of other guys that was in this draft. And he pulled Jaden Ivey aside after practice one day, and he's like, who's the guy? Who's the leader? Like who's the dude on this team? And Jaden Ivey said it's Chet, and it's not even close. And like, if you watch Jaden Ivey play basketball, how competitive that guy is. For him to say that with no hesitation, for him to submit to that, that's not nothing, man. And Sports Illustrated actually did a story with, I'm going to butcher the name. It was, I want to say it was like P3. It's like some kind of like sports science physiology type of thing. But basically they did studies on Chet's body and like how he moves and stuff like that. And they like all the studies came back and said that he's a very low risk for like major injury just from like, basically running into somebody, like, banging with the big guys, as everybody says. So yeah, I'm not too worried about him, man. Like, I mean, like I touched on, like he's got a ridiculous work ethic. So I don't doubt that he's going to be able to come in, put in the work. Like he said in interviews, like I do eat, I do lift weights, like I do all that stuff. So I think he's going to do that and be able to, build on the frame a little bit. He doesn't have as broad shoulders as like a Jabari Smith Jr. does. I think Jabari's going to be able to fill out the frame a little bit more, but he could still put on a little bit of weight. But the other thing with Chet, like if you watch film, there's a lot of guys that'll get position on Chet. Like they'll go exactly where they want to go and they'll think they have him where they want him. But just because the dude has a 7'6" wingspan, he has crazy long length, he has crazy defensive instincts, can block shots with both hands, can test with both hands, he still gets the best of the matchup, even when dudes set position on him. So, yeah, I mean, I get the concerns about the frame. Like, maybe, it will come to fruition in the NBA, but, people are quick to throw out, like, how's he going to guard Jokic? How's he going to guard an Embiid? Well, there's not a lot of people in the NBA in general that can guard Jokic or Embiid. So, like, I'm not worried about that. And honestly, like, in terms of, like, my vision for Chet, I think that in the short term, we play him at the 4 position and play JRE at the center, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, because last year we saw JRE play a lot of 4 and 5. And, he's 6'9", he's big, he's a sturdy guy. He's another guy that has high feel and high skill, high IQ for the game. But, he's a little bit stronger. He plays a little more physical brand of basketball. So I think that if my prediction is that we start JRE at 5 and we start Chet at 4, kind of let him play as like a weak side defender, kind of like we did Serge Ibaka back in the day, and, let him feast on, coming weak side, help side, getting some blocks that way. Let Jeremiah kind of bang down low, and then, Chet come flying in, at least until he can put some LBs on his frame. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I've heard that tossed around a lot as JRE being like maybe the ideal back front court mate for Chet, at least to start right now. I tend to agree. I'm not sure if like Baisley offers enough shooting. Like even JRE, he's kind of like slightly below average, but I think he takes enough volume and can get a high enough like shot profile as far as like the looks. So I think that'll work. I do like the idea of those guys in the front court. And I'm also glad that you kind of even touched on just projecting what Chet's role is within this Thunder roster. You talked about it with SGA. He's someone that you need to create driving lanes for because he is elite getting to the rim. He's a fantastic finisher. And that's been a problem over the years of the rebuild, that the team has not always been able to space out for him. What was it? The first year of the rebuild, his percentage of unassisted shots was insane. Like he was pretty much getting everything in isolation on his own. And then it was made harder by the fact that like none of his teammates could function as release valves on kickouts. So to have Chet Holmgren, be a pick and pop option, in pick and roll, to be someone who can attack a closeout and help SGA attract defenders as well in other areas. I think that's something that's going to be huge, and I love the fit between those two. It's one of the things I was always watching with OKC, because I thought regardless of which of the 3 bigs they land, they're going to be a perfect destination, because when you're taking a big like that, you want to pair them with a really gifted guard, and OKC had the best guard there of those top 3 teams. So the fit between Chet and SGA, I'm going to be looking at like all of the 2-man pairing numbers all season for those guys, because they are the foundation of this rebuild right now.
And Giddey, I mean, you can't forget about Giddey. Like, Giddey's one of the. I mean, he's probably. I mean, it's easy to say he's top 10 passer in the NBA, but like there's argument he's top 5, top 6, top 7 passer. Like he's just a gifted passer. And, we talk about surrounding Shea with shooters. Like, it's just because he hasn't had shooting since he's been at OKC. But, it goes for Giddey too. Like Giddey would benefit for shooting too. He's a guy that gets a lot of his game going from driving, but he's also extremely intelligent, one of the best passers in the league. And, him and Chet been kind of flirting back and forth with their Instagram comments for months now. So, we saw something coming there. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how Chet benefits Giddey as well, because, I talked about the spacing with Shea, but like, we have a legit like 7'6" like guy that can go up and like finish alley-oops. Like we just didn't have that this year. Like Darius Baisley was probably our best lob finisher on the team. And, he's like 6'9". So, just a little bit different.
Yeah, true. I did forget about Giddy, gifted passer, and I think he's going to find some great looks for Chet as well as the other guys that we're going to start to talk about. The last question I kind of want to finish up on Chet with, and I'm going to ask this for each of the prospects, just to kind of get the feel of the Thunder fan base. But
Mhm.
and also it sounds like you pretty much already answered this one, but I'll ask again anyway. Did you or Thunder fans maybe want anyone else in that spot, second overall?
I mean, it's a mixed bag in terms of Thunder fans. There's still a lot of Thunder fans that, kind of have the same concerns that you do about his frame. Like they're freaked out about it. They're terrified. They think that he's going to be a bust. And I, I feel very confident that Chet isn't going to be a
Mhm.
bust. Like it's very well that he might not reach the expectations that a lot of people have for him, but I feel very confident he won't be a bust. Like he'll be at least a rotation starter NBA player. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that really wanted Jabari. There's a lot of guys that really wanted Paolo, but at the end of the day, a vast majority, I wouldn't say wanted Chet, but now that
Mhm.
he's here, they've heard what he had to say about him saying that he wanted to be in OKC all along. I think they're starting to come around on it because I mean, it's kind of what every fan base does. You hate a
Mhm.
person until he's there, and then you convince yourself that you was with him all along. So yeah.
Yeah, a recurring trend that I've had to hammer home in like a lot of episodes of this series as well is the fact that the level of trust that the fan base has for Sam Presti,
Mm-hmm.
largely any move he makes, like you can reasonably justify it and say, hey, this is a very smart GM with a great draft record and a great eye for talent. If he picks this guy, even if maybe my evaluation of him wasn't necessarily as high, I can at least understand it. I can support the pick and I can go into the season with some level of enthusiasm. So that's something that will probably always be there for Thunder fans, where even if they don't love the evaluation of a prospect, they have a belief in Sam Presti and his vision for this team.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you, man. Like, we have Topic Thunder, we have shirts made. We had shirts made last year. It was a saying that I started saying, the Sixers had trust the process. So we said
Mhm.
trust the Presti. That's our thing. And last year we wasn't trusting the Presti. There was a lot of people, myself included, that didn't like the Josh Giddey pick, felt like he was a little bit of a reach. There was people that were mad we traded the pick that ended up being Alperen Şengün for 2 future picks. There was
Mhm.
people that thought we reached on Trey Mann. Like, there was a lot of doubt in last year's draft, but as the year go on, it's like, Presti nailed the Giddey pick. He nailed the Trey Mann pick. Like he nailed the JRE pick. Honestly, like for pick 55 in the draft, he nailed the Aaron Wiggins pick. So like
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, Presti's batted 1,000 last year. So I went into this draft like just full confidence. I was like, I don't care what happens. I might be confused about it, but I'm going to trust the dude because, and if you look at his record in the top 6 of the draft, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Josh Giddey, now Chet Holmgren, like the dude doesn't miss. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of trusting Presti, we're going to get into one of like the big blockbuster moves. They trade back into the lottery to get the 11th pick from New York. They select Ousmane Dieng with that pick. Since the draft, I've continued listening to like podcasts, various reports, and it really does seem like there was a lot of other teams like maybe eyeing Dieng at that spot. And
mm-hmm.
so New York did have some other options. And so initially the 3 draft picks for just that number 11, I think there were some mixed reactions. Some people like, oh no, why is Presti trading 3 picks just to get 11? And then others were like, hey, we got all these picks, you got to use them at some point. So where do you kind of stand on the fact of like moving 3 future draft picks to select Ousmane Deng at 11?
See, for me, it's not even the quantity of the picks, it's the quality of the picks. So,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't, like you said, like whenever the trade first happened, like we was all kind of confused because like I love Ousmane Dieng, and I'll get into
Mm-hmm.
that in a second. Like he was one of my favorite players in this draft class. But, at first we thought that we traded 3 first-round picks, including pick 12, to get to pick 11. And it's like, okay, well, like that's a bit much. But once we realized we had pick 12, we was all like very excited. When it came out that we, like I said, didn't trade pick 12, and didn't even trade pick 34, and also didn't trade our pick for next year, which stacked draft class next year. But it was the 3 picks, 2 of which that we traded in the Alperen Şengün trade last year, and then another pick that we had acquired. But 2 of them are lottery protected. One of them's top 18 protected. Um, you know, like I said, we want as many shots as we can get in the draft class next year to get a guy like Victor Wembanyama to win the lottery, because all you got to do is be in the lottery to have top 4 chances. But with those being lottery protected and top 18 protected, it's not really going to help us in those endeavors. So yeah, I'm completely fine with seeing those go.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset of, you have so many, and the purpose of them, you're not going to roster that many prospects. The purpose of them is, if you have a prospect that you really like, you have those extra assets to, sweeten the deal on a trade and move up and get the guy that you want. And so clearly that's what Presti felt, and he felt strongly about Dieng. During the intro presser, he even revealed that he saw Dieng early in his playing career, playing in Paris at Tony Parker's camp. So
he was 16, I believe.
Yep. I think he even mentioned Teo Maledon was there. So while that they both end up on the Thunder now. But I think with Sam Presti having that level of belief in a prospect to trade 3 future picks, that made me kind of like double take, because my evaluation of Dieng was not necessarily that high. I didn't love him as a prospect. I have like some questions about the offensive development, even though I think he's going to be a stellar defensive player, like, probably even from day one. Just the jumper is a swing skill, and on a team where we've already talked about the importance of shooting. I had some questions about his fit. I had some questions about his own offensive development, but when a GM like Presti makes that kind of an investment in a prospect, I think you at least really have to give him a fair shot in the evaluation, and just like let things play out with Dieng. I know it sounds like you said you maybe had some kind of nervousness about the pick as well at first, and then maybe that died down for you. Could you kind of speak to your experience when you learned they selected Ousmane Dieng?
Yeah, so I was really excited when it was announced that we was getting Ousmane Dieng. Like from the jump, I didn't care what it was, because like I said, he was one of my favorite prospects. I think I had him at number 9 on my final big board. But yeah, like something that I've been saying to everybody like throughout the draft process about these prospects is, context is key. Kind of like I was explaining with Chet, like, everybody's like, oh, he just averaged 14 points per game. Like, well, yeah, he was doing that on scratch, because the type of team he was with, the number in the pecking order he was on offense, and what he does on defense. Same thing with Dieng. This is an 18-year-old kid that went to the NBL from France, didn't know anybody from Adam, had to go through 2 weeks of quarantine by himself, couldn't bring anybody with him, basically living in a hotel room throughout the season on a team that wanted to be competitive early on, didn't want to play any of the young guys, was very veteran heavy. So he was getting spotty, inconsistent minutes throughout, the beginning of the season, and he wasn't able to catch a rhythm. So like, there's a lot of human element, catching up to him at that point. Now, as the season played out, they started to get out of the point where they realized, they wasn't going to be contending. They wanted to play the young guys a little bit. The second half of the season, he started to get more minutes, started to get more consistent run, and you could really start to see him come into his own. He started playing more confidently. He started shooting the ball, more confidently. Like you could just tell, like, it was night and day, the first and the second half of the season. I call it a Jekyll Hyde season. And talking about that with Ousmane Dieng, Jaden Hardy in the G League Ignite, Malachi Branham at Ohio State. Like, when I see a prospect struggle so hard in the early part of the season and improve drastically, like, that's a huge testament to the type of work ethic that person has, B, the type of like mental strength that they have, because like for you to be able to overcome the shortcomings early on in the year, like that tells me how mentally tough you are. And that tells me you probably got a little bit of dog in you. And like, that's something that I really evaluate high, in my prospect evaluation. So, that was one of the reasons I really love Ousmane Dieng. I'm the leader. I am the founder of the Dieng Gang, #Dieng Gang on Twitter. So, I'm huge on Ousmane Dieng, and I've been telling everybody for a long time that whether you like Dieng or not, he's probably the most Presti player of all time, because back in the day when we had Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, we tried to draft these long athletic defenders. That's Ousmane Dieng. Not super athletic, but he's still an athlete. now that Russell Westbrook's gone, we had Chris Paul, we had Shea, we had all these guys. Presti wants to draft guys with high feel, high skill, high IQ. That's also Ousmane Dieng. I've had people draft guys come on my podcast and say that he might be one of the best passers in the draft if he's not the best passer in the draft. So that's also Ousmane Dieng. We discussed the French pipeline, the connection with Tony Parker, drafting Teo Maledon, bringing in guys like Jalen Horde, Olivier Sarr. He's got a connection to the French pipeline, the NBL pipeline, drafting Terrence Ferguson, drafting Josh Giddey. Like there's a connection there in the NBL. So like all these boxes that you would just check for a Presti's prospect, Ousmane Dieng was that guy. Not only that, he's young. I think he's 19 years old. He has so much upside. Like he has top 5 in the draft class upside. And he's super raw. Like when you look at the Thunder team and you look at the head coach, Mark Daignault, and, he came from the G League, like that's how he got his name in the business, is developing players. And when you look at what he was able to do with guys like Trey Mann last year, like the step he took from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, when you look at, what he's been able to do with Josh Giddey and even Poku, like he's done more with Poku than, we thought could be possible. Like Poku's still got a long way to go, but, he's made a lot of strides under Daignault. I mean, it just makes sense. Like it just made sense that Ousmane Dieng was going to be the pick for Presti. And let me tell you, I was very excited.
Everything that you just said, it makes total sense of him really fitting the profile of what Sam Presti is looking for in a draft prospect. I think one thing that I'm still, maybe struggling with about the pick is something I've talked about like in my entire pre-draft series. When you're in this position of rebuilding, I think teams have to straddle this fine line of going after the best available prospect and then also going after prospects that fit. And so, I don't necessarily think the decision should have been guided like solely off fit, like, oh, he can't shoot, so don't draft him. But at the same time, it's like when I'm thinking about it, how are you going to integrate him now into the team and maximize him and make sure he actually hits that highest outcome desire, like how much does he have the ball in his hands in a team where he plays with Shea and Giddey and, Chet is probably going to be getting the ball a decent number of times. Like how much is he even, on the pro team to start compared to like maybe getting stints in the blue where he can dominate the ball and be, the highlight of the show there. So I think like just from my perspective with Dieng, like he's being talked about like this point forward who's like this gifted passer. And how much are we going to see that in a system for OKC that like wants multiple ball handlers and like Shea's gonna. I even forgot Trey Mann, who I really want to have the ball in his hand a lot of the time because I love his shaking craft off the dribble. So like where does Dieng kind of fit in here in this very crowded backcourt of ball handlers now?
Well, my projected star lineup is Shea Giddey, Dort, and Chet and JRE. So that leaves guys like Trey Mann, like Ousmane Dieng, like Jaylin Williams coming off the bench. And somebody on Twitter, I don't remember his @ but his name is Warner West. He put it very elegantly. In the NBA right now, there's a lot of heliocentric offenses. You look at James Harden, you look at Luka Doncic, you look at Trae Young. Like there's a lot of offenses that just revolve around one player. And what Presti's starting to do is what he called the Hydra approach. You surround this team with guys that can all handle the ball, that can all create for themselves as well as their teammates. And it's basically like, yeah, you might be able to, eliminate one from the game, but you still got everybody else. So, he's kind of building a team like that. And, I think Ousmane Dieng and I also think Jaylin Williams are, great examples of players that would work in that kind of system. In terms of like what they would do off the bench, like I do think that, Trey Mann, Ousmane Dieng, Jaylin Williams could all work together. Like I see Ousmane Dieng kind of being the lead initiator on offense just because like Trey Mann, Jaylin Williams are like, even though I believe in Ousmane Dieng's jump shot, like I can see that Jaylin Williams and Trey Mann are far superior shooters than him. So I like him as like the lead initiator. And especially at 6'10", like if you're a 6'10" initiator, like you're going to be able to, see over guys, make passes that other guys couldn't make. So I like him there. Trey Mann, as good as he is with the ball in his hands, it's for him. Like, he doesn't do much creating for his
Very true.
teammates. So I like Ousmane Dieng as like the lead initiator off the bench. But what you said about the G League is true. Like, if there's anything that the Thunder do is they utilize the G League very well. Like, I'd say akin to the Heat. I mean, pretty much everybody on the team last year except for Shea, Dort, Giddey, and Darius Bazley for whatever reason. And I said he wasn't even safe from going to the G League, but everybody went to the G League at some point last year. Besides, like, the vets like Kenrich Williams, Mike Muscala, Derek Favors. But I fully expect Dieng. I fully expect both the Jaylin Williams to spend time in the G League. I don't see Chet going there. I think that we're going to give him as much run as possible. But yeah, I could see them, going there like a week or two out of the time. This past season was awesome because the Blue played in the same arena that the Thunder did. And so, like, there was some weekends they would have like double headers where they could, play in the G League game, but also be on the bench for the Thunder game. I think that Presti alluded to in the exit interviews that the league wants to eliminate that. So we'll see where the Blue plays. But yeah, I can see them getting some run, but I do trust his ability to, come off the bench, kind of be a lead initiator.
Okay. Well, just to wrap up our Dieng talk, the same question I asked for Chet. Did you or other Thunder fans have any other prospect that you were really maybe eyeing to be taken here?
Man, yeah, like looking back at it, I'd say AJ Griffin Jr. Like, even after getting Ousmane Dieng, AJ Griffin was a guy that I kind of wanted at that point. And then Jalen Duren, like, there was a lot of Thunder fans that really liked the idea of Jalen Duren, but I kind of wanted to pass, kind of like basically just because of what I said about surrounding Shea with shooters, or at least guys that can handle the ball. And Jalen Duren's like, he's skilled in a lot of ways, but not the ways that the Thunder need him to be skilled. So
yeah, I agree. Like, after really sitting with it, AJ Griffin is probably really the only guy that I'm like, I wish I would have had him here, especially with what we project as his ability to shoot. I think would have been perfect, just complement to what this team has right now. But obviously Presti believes in Dieng, so just off of that, I think he's going to be having a very solid NBA career.
Yeah, and I mean, and also like the fact that he fell to 16, like, there's probably something out there with the medicals that people didn't like. There's a reason he fell out of the lottery.
Okay. Well, now that we talked Dieng, let's talk the other lottery pick, Jaylin Williams out of Santa Clara. He's the 12th pick in the selection for Oklahoma City. I really love what he projects to be: 6'6", like a 7-foot wingspan, prototypical kind of like 3-and-D, what you're looking for. I also think he has some underrated like on-ball ability and usability, just with his ability to like run the pick and roll as a secondary option, be a spot-up guy. I think he provides a lot of functionality to the offense, and I kind of even I think he might have an outside shot of like beating Dort out as like the wing of the future for this team. So what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I love Jaylin Williams as well. I actually tweeted this out, but in one of the podcasts I had Alex of Draft Film School on from No Ceilings, and I was talking about kind of my dream scenario. And I actually had it played out differently, but I wanted to trade 12 for 13 and 15 from the Hornets and end up with a three, the first 3 picks being Chet Holmgren, Ousmane Dieng, and Jaylin Williams. So that was that was a shot in the dark that ended up happening. So that was fun. But no, man, I love Jaylin Williams. I know people call him J-Dub. I've been pushing the Santa nickname just because it's fun. The night of the draft, we was having a good old time on the podcast trying to, just saying his name, just being like who. So I started calling him Santa because he went to Santa Clara, and also because he's got such a deep bag. All right. So no, I really like him. Honestly, he reminds me a lot of Paul George, young Paul George in his game, just like you said, with his 3-and-D ability, but he does a lot with the ball in his hands. Like, he's really good at creating shots for himself, but he's got some high level passing reads as well. Like, he had one, I don't remember who they were playing, but like, he drove from the left wing all the way under the basket and flipped like a live dribble left hand pass to the right wing, wide open, past 3 defenders. Like, that's a high level pass. You don't see a lot of people making that pass, but yeah, I really like the idea of him. I mean, a guy that shot almost 40% from 3 in college last year. Like, sign me up. I need that. He broke our guy's Chet's ankles, and honestly, I watched a recap of both of their games against Gonzaga, and he put some moves on Chet. I can't lie. Like, it's probably good we got him on our team because he was kind of the Chet stopper. But yeah, I really like his ability to shoot the ball. Like I said, handle. I think that, as I was saying, on the bench, having Dieng, Trey Mann, Jaylin Williams, like, just have that three-headed monster of scoring, shooting, passing. I think that could really cause a lot of havoc on the bench. Also have Ousmane, Dieng, Jaylin Williams playing defense, a lot of length. The thing that turned me on to Jalen Williams at first was hearing his measurements. 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan. Like, what? Like, like that's ridiculous. I made the joke that if you take all the Thunder's draft picks and you put them right next to Poku, that, and you let them hold hands and stretch, they could reach one baseline to the other. So that's kind of my thing with them. But no, I really like Jalen Williams. I'm ranting at this point, but yeah, I really like the pick.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I truly think he can be like the wing of the future for this team, because I just think he's a prototypical what you'd want as a 2-3 in today's NBA, where I think he's able to defend multiple positions, probably will be able to do like 2 to 3. I'm already seeing some Thunder people that are saying he'll be a small ball, like 4 at some points as well. So I think that just the versatility there, especially the catch and shoot and spot up numbers. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I think I heard somewhere
I saw
like
he was
50%.
shooting like 48%. Yeah, from the catch and shoot. Like,
Yeah, so
that's ridiculous.
those are absurd numbers, and just what we were discussing this roster needs. Somebody who's able to hit those shots on the kickouts when Giddey's driving, when Shea's driving, when Chet has someone in the post or something. They need a release valve. And so having someone like on the wing that shoots that well, and that will also be able to attack closeouts, will also be able to do things in pick and roll. It just goes back to what you were already kind of discussing of like Sam Presti's vision for this team of multiple ball handlers, and not just having it, the offense be dictated by one player every possession, where there's a lot of variability with it. And I love the element of that Jalen's going to be able to add to this team. It definitely doesn't sound like you had anybody in mind for taking ahead of Jalen, but were there anyone, like you were saying, like Thunder fans kind of looking to get instead of Jalen?
I mean, I would just say that there was a lot of Thunder fans that didn't even know who the dude was. And, I would say that they're more in the casual crowd, because if you listen to any of our podcasts, follow any of our tweets, like, you knew who Jaylin Williams was. If you watched the combine, you knew who Jaylin Williams was. Like, he was the biggest riser from the combine, with his measurements, his athletic testing, his shooting, his performance during the scrimmages. Like, he was easily the biggest riser from the combine. So, yeah, I mean, there were some guys that didn't know who he was. Now that some highlights have circulated, now that we've heard him speak, they're all on board for him. But yeah, there seems to always be a player that Presti picks that Thunder fans are like, who's that?
Yeah, and also to mention on Jalen, if people haven't seen the film study he did with Mike Schmitz, I definitely would recommend checking that out. I think hearing him speak on it, I just love his perspective on things, like the improvements that he had to make from his freshman season to his second, and then especially doing those improvements like during pandemic seasons in college where gyms are shut down. He even spoke to the fact that he went a long time without shooting the basketball, and so for him to have had the jump in 3-point shooting that he had between like freshman and sophomore year, the development that he could still have in the NBA, I think that gets me very excited for what he could possibly become going forward. And I think that especially after watching that video is why I'm so bullish on him, is potentially replacing Dort. The Thunder have picked up so much length with like defensive, like very high defensive potential, that that's exactly why I'm like, Dort is like 6'3", 6'4", and as fantastic as he is defensively, as versatile as he is, he gets beat on some height matchups. If you've maybe got comparable defenders with more height, I think that should make Presti a lot more willing to move on from him, and Jalen might be the guy in my eyes that really forces that.
Yeah, and I think that Presti actually reported yesterday that they are picking up Dort's team option. So it sounds like he will be a restricted free agent going into the season. So yeah, I mean, we'll just see what happens with Dort. I mean, he's a guy that's improved every year, just like a lot of other guys on the team have. So, maybe he comes in, makes like just a ridiculous leap, and maybe Jalen's just not ready. But yeah, I mean, I understand all that. Like, I think that Jalen's a guy that not only has a really high floor, but he has a really high ceiling too. Like, he's got a really high upside that not a lot of people realize because he was a junior coming out of college. So they're ageist. They think just because they're a little bit older that they don't have a high ceiling. But much like Keegan Murray, like I think that Keegan Murray can be a really good player in this league. But yeah, so I mean, if Presti leans, like, and if he's better than Dort, like it looks like he's going to, then yeah, I could see making Dort expendable. But if that's the case, then I kind of wish we moved on from Dort in the draft when we could have got something from him. That's just me, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's a true point. Well, now that we've gushed about Jaylin Williams, it's time to talk about Jaylin Williams. Arizona was it that he
Arkansas?
Oh, Arkansas. Yeah. So yeah, Jaylin Williams out of Arkansas. Already going by J Will. I think for him, I definitely had to look into him. I hadn't really heard of him. I wasn't really doing all that much second round prep. I was just kind of looking at lottery guys. And so from my like diving into the film on him, the first thing that really stuck out to me is just his feel as well. I don't think we're not going to talk about him as a passer with these other guys, but I think what he can do as a high-low passer, like at the top of the key, like I'm surprised by the vision that he has. And so he is once again right in line with the kind of things that Presti's been looking for in this rebuild. Also, a explosive athlete, had the most charges, I think, in college. I saw somewhere. So like, not only is he going to try and be a rim protector, I think he's going to try and be smart about defense and, not always try and block the shot, affect the shot, wherever he can, affect the defense, draw charges. So that's something that we'll probably see from him like right away in the NBA. Like, those are things that he can contribute from day one.
Yeah, he's a really smart player. He's also a guy that's really young. I wouldn't say he has a ton of upside. He's kind of he kind of reminds me of a younger Jeremiah Robinson Earl, honestly. And maybe that speaks to how the Thunder feel about JRE, but the rumor was that they was really high on JRE, and like he was the guy that they had designated last draft. So I still think they're pretty high on him. But yeah, I mean, he's very intelligent. I've heard people say that he's one of the best big man passers in the draft. Obviously, the drawing charges thing is a thing, but also like with Jaylin Williams, like I'm a huge Kentucky fan. So I saw firsthand, like playing against Arkansas, like he could shoot a little bit, and there's a difference between college 3-point and NBA, especially when you're a big man. And you do so in low attempts. So whether it's going to translate right away or if at all, remains to be seen. But like I said, it plays right into the new age Thunder of high skill, high feel, high IQ. So I understood the pick. I feel like it was a reach. There was a lot of guys that I liked more than Jaylin Williams. And I know you'll ask me that here in a little bit, but yeah, but like, I mean, all in all, like I'm fine with it. Like, when you have those first 3 picks, you can take Barney the 9 at 34 and I'll be all right.
Yeah. I think for the Jalen pick, the way I viewed it, and why I do kind of like the pick, although I don't really have any context for the kind of players that they may have left on the table. But I just view it as like, if you have questions of how much you're going to put Chet at the center, getting other big bodies in there won't hurt. And we saw that with Cleveland and Evan Mobley, where they didn't want to just rush and make him their center, and they play him with Jared Allen, and they had very productive minutes going supersized with their rosters. So I think if Sam Presti can kind of imitate that to a degree and get other big bodies, if he has any concern about like Chet holding up at the 5, I think taking a guy who's like a gifted high-low passer, maybe has some flashes, is like, spot up from the corner at the very least. If we're not going to have him like regularly taking like the actual normal threes and stuff, if he can be a spot up corner guy, if he can also be like a secondary rim protector, this guy that gets charges at the rim, I think that's a player that can play in the front court next to Chet, especially with Holmgren's ability to shoot the ball. So that puts him in a similar position to JRE, where they can really have some high impact minutes together. So I'm a fan of his, even if he probably will be more in the blue than on the big team this season. But with Derek Favors headed out, I doubt JaMychal Green ends up keeping the roster spot. There's some vacancies for other big men to get minutes here.
Oh yeah, I Favors picked up his player option, so JaMychal, but Presti said that he's going to be working. Yesterday, he said that he's going to be working to find JaMychal a new home before the season starts. He didn't say as much with Derek Favors. Apparently, Derek Favors really likes being in Oklahoma City, so that's fun. There's a lot of candidates. The aforementioned Taylor Maledon, Ty Jerome, Isaiah Roby. His contract's non-guaranteed till a certain point this offseason. I've been saying, like, one of the common themes I've been saying is heads are going to roll this offseason. We got 20 guys on the roster going into training camp, and Presti said that he might just bring 20 guys into training camp and, let them compete, let it be a dogfight, let them earn your stripes, so to speak. But eventually you got to cut that to 15. So I would say that there's some easy candidates to find those 15 spots.
Okay. That might be one of the last questions I wrap it up on, just what your vision of the final roster is. But the final Jalen question is just, you already sound like you had guys that you were thinking about before him. So who do you wish, and maybe if you've heard other Thunder fans chime in on this, like, who do you wish they grabbed at that spot then?
Literally the next three picks after the Jaylin Williams pick, I would have wanted more. Max Christie out of Michigan State going to the Los Angeles Lakers. He's a guy that shot 32% from three, but he has a pure jump shot and really gets after it defensively. He's got really long arms, really quick feet, like really gets after it defensively. I would have loved to have him. Jaden Hardy had G League Ignite. Obviously he struggled throughout the year, mainly at the start of the year, but like he's still a guy that has top 5 pedigree in the class, but for the recruiting class the prior year. I still believe in a shot. I think that he was given a challenge going into G League Ignite to kind of be more of a passer and, not dribble the air out of the ball so much. And, it took him a while to get used to it. And, you can't really fault the guy. He's literally a kid. He's 18 years old. So I think that towards the end of the year, you got to see what you would see out of Jaden Hardy. I think he's going to kill it at Dallas. And then last but not least, and this is the one that hurt me the most, is Gabriel Procida. I don't know how you say it, but the dude is 6'8", high feel, high skill, can shoot the heck out of the ball, one of the bounciest swings in the draft. And when you talk about has that dog in him, that dude has that dog in him. And he's a guy that you could have brought in right away, or you could draft in a stash. And now he's going to the Detroit Pistons to add to that young core. So that hurt my heart as well. That one probably hurt the worst. That was the guy that I really wanted.
Well, hopefully Jay Will still ends up working out in Oklahoma City. I'm glad we got to talk about each one of these prospects, because they're going to provide like a lot of different things, some high value things. And this is a successful draft class for Sam Presti and the Thunder. I do kind of want to get into the roster crunch as we wrap this up. 20 people rostered right now, 15 roster spots. Who are you cutting if you were given GM title today?
Man, it's tough to remember all the guys, but I would say JaMychal Green gets gone. You could probably get rid of him for a fake second at this point, just get the money off the books and, top 55 protected second round pick, like a pick that's not going to mean anything. Just for your roster spot. Taylor Maledon, I think, could get cut. I think we've kind of seen all need to see out of him. And then when you have Shea, Giddey, Trey Mann, Lou Dort still on the roster, like you still have all these guards. I think you can get rid of him. Ty Jerome, the same. Like, he shot really well the first year, specifically. I think he was one of the best players in the NBA off pick and roll. Last year was not the case. He was just abysmal anytime he was on the court. Isaiah Roby, like, he showed a lot. Like, I think Roby could be a solid, maybe even rotation player in the NBA for some teams, and maybe even the Thunder. But like I said, his contract's non-guaranteed. If we cut him at a certain point, I don't know what the date is off the top of my head, but so I think he's an easy candidate. And at that point, it comes down to: do you want to cut Derek Favors? Do you want to cut Mike Muscala. I hope not. I love Mike Muscala. He's been on our podcast multiple times. Like I'm a huge Moose guy. Yeah, I don't know, that last roster spot's a little bit harder than the other ones, I will say. But there's always the possibility that you could work out a trade to another team as well, before the season starts. And Baisley, I made a meme. Is
So I think you froze. I'm not.
They're supposed to do better. So I think that those are two guys that could be on the chopping block.
Okay, you froze up a little bit after the Baisley part, but
I think my phone died. I lost my hotspot. My bad.
All good. And we got the gist to kind of like who you think is on the chopping block, and I think that's fairly accurate. Sam Presti is going to be doing his best to move some of those guys in a trade if possible, but when it comes to training camp, guys will have to get cut. And you gave a fairly accurate picture of who that's probably going to end up being. The one thing I really want to finish up on is just about the competitive timeline of this team. It's what this series revolves around. It's Shai's nickname at this point. Like everyone's obsessed with the timeline of this team and when they're going to be competitive. So with Chet added to this team, Giddey added to this team, and Shai about to be starting his 5-year max, like what do you see as the competitive timeline of this team? Are we still talking about tanking and trying to optimize next year's pick, which is going to be in a loaded draft class, or are they more like Sacramento's position of trying to make moves to get into the play-in by trade deadline?
Yeah, Presti maintains that he's going to kind of just roll the ball out there and kind of see what they do. Maybe make evaluations, come to trade deadline, all-star break, determine if it's time to sit guys, not risk injury, having them out there or something like that. But ultimately, I've been saying that I think we're in the lottery next year. That's not to say we're going to be a bottom 3 team like we have been the past 2 years. But I think we are in the lottery. I think that, best case scenario, maybe we perform well enough that we could be in the play-in game, which you could very well be in the play-in game and be in the lottery if the Clippers were, and we got their pick at number 12. So it's very possible for that to happen. But the reason being, 2023, it's not just me. There's a lot of people that have kind of circled 2023 for the year because of the crazy draft class that you have, because Kemba Walker's contract comes off your books, because there's somebody else that came off the books. Gosh, I'm flustered. Basically, you have a lot of more cap flexibility in 2023. The CBA is going to be worked out by then. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Thunder have been screwed by the CBA twice now. So we kind of want to see how that's going to look before we start making any major moves. And, also Chet, as good as he is, I don't think he's a finished product. I think that he does improve the defense, but I think that he still is raw and he's going to need some time to bring along. Ousmane Dieng the same way. Jaylin Williams, I think that, he's got a higher forward, like I said, but this is still a very young team. And I think that by design, by them being young, they're still going to leave some games on the table. And I think that we're still, not gonna be one of the top teams. And also just look at the West, man. You got 10 playoff teams that I think are all still in the thick of it. Utah Jazz, maybe they blow it up, but even after that, you've got the Kings, who I think looks really good at the end of the year with Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. They add Keegan Murray. Then you got the Lakers, who if they have a healthy team, they're still a really good team. You can't count a team out with LeBron. And then also you got the Portland Trailblazers, who drafted Shaedon Sharpe, got Jeremy Grant. I think they're better than they were last year. Damian Lillard, is he healthy? They're probably a better team as well. So ultimately, I think the Rockets and Thunder are going to be at the bottom of the Western Conference again. That's how I see it. But, who knows? Maybe they can overachieve and end up in that 10-9 spot. But I don't see it going much higher than that. And but all that to say, I think 2023 is the year that we see, things start to happen. Whether that being, pushing in your picks to trade for guys, or maybe, maybe even throwing in a piece that you've developed all this time. Maybe Josh Giddey's on the chopping block for like a really like good player. Like there's a lot of people that want to bring back Kevin Durant. Maybe Josh Giddey's the guy you have to sacrifice for that to happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Don't come at me, Thunder fans. I know a lot of you still don't want Kevin Durant on the team. But that's a possibility. But yeah, 2023 offseason, I think, is when crap's really going to pop off for Thunder fans. And I personally cannot wait.
Yeah, you outlined that great, because that's probably best case scenario as well. Like, be a competitive team while still like not a successful team in the standings, because that 2023 draft class, like, you want to be as close to the top as possible. And so you give yourself the best chance of that by like just letting the young guys play, letting them develop. And so by the end of training camp, I'm sure the cuts, the trades, those are going to optimize like playing young guys. And Sam Presti said he's going to let them roll it out. And, I still don't think he's going to make any investments to like be competitive this season. So, I think they're still going to be trying to angle themselves very well for next year's draft lottery. And that's the position you want this team to be in, I think. So I kind of agree with you, where I'm really eyeing 2023, what happens in that offseason and what changes this team really decides to go through after that. I really appreciate your insight in all of this, because I think that's really going to help me like nail down my vision for this team and the franchise and the team building. And the perspective of like an actual Thunder fan has been extremely helpful in all of this. It's going to continue to be helpful. So I want to encourage Thunder fans, Thunder Chats fans who found this video, definitely subscribe to the channel, comment stuff. Like I want to hear your perspective when I make these kind of Thunder videos. I'll also want to give the floor back to Dill one time, because he does amazing work. I went really deep, digging deep into his podcast as I invited him on the show. Like, I listened to your work, and especially that post-draft show, I loved it. And so like, I'm glad to have you on. I want to encourage everyone that's checking this out to go also support the things that you're doing as well. So I'll give you the floor so you can let everyone know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, man, definitely appreciate all the kind words. You can follow me on my Twitter at Thunder Chats, at @TH_CHATS, as I like to say. My podcast I actually do with 6 other Thunder fans. It's called Topic Thunder Podcast. You can follow us at OKC Topic Thunder on Twitter, and you can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. I mean, we just went through like a 2-month period where we had like all these draft experts on, breaking down pretty much every prospect in the draft. So if you want to get your fix on Chet Holmgren, Ousmane, either of the Jaylin Williams, or if you're a fan of another team and you want to, get your fix on a prospect on them, like, definitely check them out. They're in the link on our Twitter. And also I write for Boomtown Hoops. I put out a piece, once, maybe twice every month. I'm going to be working on a piece coming up, kind of, reviewing the draft and what it means for the Thunder in the short term and long term. So definitely be looking out for that. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it. I definitely appreciate you having me on. It was a good conversation, good time.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Once again, I just want to say thank you to Dylan. Thank you to the viewers, everyone that's watching and listening to this right now. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, like the video, comment, all those kind of things to get the YouTube algorithm going. Like I said, I really appreciate you checking out this video and enjoy the rest of your day.